Welcome back to Us Mint Mysteries. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of British coins, uncovering the top 7 UK 1 penny pieces that could be hiding unbelievable value. Some of these humble pennies, the kind many people once overlooked as pocket change, are now worth small fortunes, even pushing into six figures. You'll see rare errors, historical designs, and surprising details that could make your old penny worth more than you ever dreamed. So stay tuned, because the values get higher and more shocking with each coin. And if you enjoy discovering the hidden treasures in coins, make sure to subscribe right now, so you never miss the next mystery. First up, we have the 1965 1 penny. At first glance, it looks like just another bronze coin from mid-20th century Britain, but this one carries a story that blends history, nostalgia, and surprising collector demand. On the obverse, you'll find the young portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Mary Gillick. This was the very first portrait of the Queen to appear on coinage after her coronation in 1953. Collectors often note the simplicity and elegance of Gillick's design, the uncrowned portrait that symbolized youthful optimism. For many, this portrait isn't just a likeness, it's a memory of post-war Britain rebuilding and modernizing. Flip the coin over, and the reverse features Britannia seated with her shield and trident, a design that had appeared on pennies for over 300 years. By 1965, though, this design was nearing the end of its long run. Decimalization was on the horizon, and the traditional penny would soon vanish from circulation, making these later dates more sentimental to collectors. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The 1965 penny was minted in huge numbers. Over 1 billion were struck. That means most examples are only worth face value, but condition and rarity within the surviving population make all the difference. A coin in circulated condition, the kind you might find in an old tin or drawer, is worth maybe a few cents, but if you have one in brilliant, uncirculated condition, and touched by wear, the value jumps significantly. Collectors pay up to $15.25 for those mint-red examples, but the real excitement lies with proof and error coins. In 1965, special proof sets were made, and these can sell for far more. Even more desirable are error strikes, off-centers, double strikes, or coins with planchet flaws. A verified 1965 penny with a dramatic mint error has been known to fetch $200 or more at auction. So why does a coin that's otherwise so common spark such interest? The answer is nostalgia. For many people in Britain, the 1965 penny was a childhood coin. It was the penny you used for sweets, newspapers, or the bus. When decimalization wiped these out in 1971, people tucked them away as keepsakes. Today, collectors seek high-grade pieces to capture that era in pristine form. So while the 1965 1 penny may not make you rich overnight, it's the perfect way to start our list of coin that's common in numbers, but rich in memory, and with hidden gems that can command hundreds of dollars if the right condition or error turns up. And remember, we're just getting started. The values are only going to climb higher from here, so stick around, the next coin will surprise you even more. Next up, we have the 1927 1 penny from the United Kingdom, struck during the reign of King George V. At first glance, it may look like just another large copper penny, but this year holds real weight in the eyes of collectors. By the late 1920s, pennies were still being produced in huge numbers for everyday use, but survival in top condition is what makes the 1927 issue special today. On the obverse, you'll see the portrait of George V facing left, designed by Bertram McKennell. Flip it over, and you're met with Britannia seated proudly with her trident and shield, a design that had graced pennies for decades. For people in Britain at the time, this was the most familiar coin in their pockets. It bought a newspaper, some sweets, or even a tram fare. But fast forward almost a century, and that humble penny can be worth far more than its face value. In circulated condition, the 1927 penny isn't particularly rare. You might find them selling for just a few pounds, especially if the coin is heavily worn. But when you move into higher grades, coins that manage to survive with their details crisp, their surface is clean, and their luster intact, the story changes dramatically. An uncirculated 1927 penny can fetch hundreds of pounds, and those certified at the very top of the grading scale have been known to soar into the thousands. Then there's the magic of proof strikes. The Royal Mint issued a limited number of proof sets in 1927 to showcase the coinage of George V. And these pennies are something else entirely. Struck with polished dies, they have a mirror-like finish and incredible detail. Because so few were made, they're highly coveted, and when they come up for sale, collectors compete fiercely. A 1927 proof penny in top condition has reached values over £5,000 to £10,000, depending on its color and quality. And of course, as with many older British coins, you'll find varieties and striking quirks that can add extra value. Slight differences in strike quality, toning, or even minor die flaws make certain pieces stand out. Add that to the coin's hefty copper presence, something that feels substantial in the hand compared to today's lightweight coins, and you can see why the 1927 penny continues to capture the imagination of collectors. So the next time you stumble across a George V. penny dated 1927, take a closer look. If it's in pristine condition, or better yet, a proof version, you may be holding a coin that's worth far more than most people realize. What once jingled in the pockets of everyday Britons could now command thousands at auction, a true reminder of how history and condition combine to create rarity and value.
Next up, we have a 1919 Lincoln Wheat Penny without a mint mark. And let me tell you, this coin is like holding a living piece of history right in the palm of your hand. Over a century old, struck during the final year of World War I, this penny was minted in Philadelphia and has survived through the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, World War II, and everything in between. The absence of a mint mark tells us it came from the main U.S. Mint, which in 1919 was producing coins at a staggering pace to meet post-war demand. But no matter how many were made, finding one today, any condition, is like finding a time capsule from a world that no longer exists. Asterisk, the example we're looking at is in heavily circulated condition, its details softened by decades of pocket wear, with Lincoln's portrait looking more like a faint silhouette than a crisp engraving. The wheat stalks on the reverse are still there, but barely distinguishable in the high points, their once sharp lines smoothed down by countless hands and pockets over the years. The color is a deep, aged brown, the kind that only comes from a century of oxidation and human touch. Some would call it worn out, but to a seasoned collector, this is a survivor. Asterisk now, in this condition, a 1919 penny without a mint mark might bring just a few dollars from a casual collector filling a spot in their album, but when you move into higher grades, the story changes dramatically. A lightly circulated example with full wheat lines and strong detail can fetch $50 to $200, depending on eye appeal. And circulated red examples, the kind that look like they were struck yesterday, are a whole different ballgame. We're talking thousands of dollars at auction, and if the coin is in the top population for its grade, the bidding war can be fierce. Asterisk, and then there's the elite tier, rare era coins from this year, off-center strikes, double dies, or coins struck on the wrong planchet are incredibly rare for 1919, but when they appear, the value can rocket into jaw-dropping territory. One spectacular 1919 penny with a dramatic off-center strike and blazing red color sold for over $475,000. Yes, nearly $500,000 for a 1-cent coin, simply because it was an extremely rare survivor in pristine shape. Asterisk, what makes this date so intriguing is its place in history. Think about it, when this penny was new, Woodrow Wilson was president, the Treaty of Versailles was being signed, and the world was trying to recover from the most devastating war it had ever seen. It's not just a coin, it's a witness to everything that came after. Every scratch, every worn-down detail tells a story, not just of commerce, but of the lives it touched. Asterisk, for collectors, the 1919 penny is more than metal and copper. It's a link to the past. And while the worn example we have here won't buy you a house, It's a reminder that sometimes the real treasure is in the history and rarity combined. And who knows, the next one you stumble across in a box of change could be the kind of high-grade, rare error jackpot that sends shockwaves through the numismatic world. Asterisk moving on, the next coin on our list is even older, even scarcer, and has a value twist that might just leave you stunned. Keep watching, this is where things get even more exciting.
Next up, we're moving into the year 1938, and this coin is where things really take a dramatic turn. At first glance, a 1938 UK 1 penny may not seem extraordinary. Millions were struck at the Royal Mint, and it circulated widely in Britain through everyday use. But as collectors know, it's not about how many were made, it's about how many have survived in the right condition, and what makes this year's penny stand out in the marketplace. Here's the shocker. The majority of these coins were heavily used in shops, pubs, and trade throughout Britain in the pre-World War II years. That means most survivors today are in poor or heavily circulated condition. So when a coin from 1938 shows up in high grade, collectors go crazy for it. Even in average circulated condition, you can expect values from just a few dollars up to around $20. But things change drastically when you step into the uncirculated grades. A gem quality 1938 penny, one with original luster and no signs of wear, can easily leap into the $5,000 to $12,000 range, depending on eye appeal and grading. But here's where it gets really thrilling. There are documented cases of 1938 pennies with slight minting anomalies, misaligned dies, weak strikes, or minor doubling that have taken bids sky high. In fact, one particularly well-preserved coin, with a subtle mint error, shocked collectors at auction when it crossed the $100,000 mark, proving just how unpredictable this series can be when condition and rarity align. Collectors also feel an emotional pull toward this date because it falls just before the Second World War. Many coins minted in the late 1930s saw heavy circulation during the war years, with shortages and rationing pushing them into constant use. That's why pristine examples are so scarce, they simply weren't set aside when new. It's like holding a piece of Britain on the brink of history, right before the world changed forever. And here's the climax. In the rarest conditions, with absolute mint brilliance, the 1938 penny has been whispered to carry a six-figure price tag over $250,000 in the right auction room. Imagine that. A coin that might have once been exchanged for a pint of beer or a loaf of bread, now commanding the price of a luxury home. That's the magic of numismatics. So while most people see just another old penny, the informed collector sees potential life-changing value. And that's exactly why the 1938 UK 1 penny deserves its spot on this list. Next up, we circle back to another 1919 UK 1 penny, but this time with a twist, because the coin we're talking about shows rusted and corroded surfaces. At first thought, you might assume that damage like this destroys value, and in many cases you'd be right. Collectors usually chase well-preserved coins with glossy chocolate brown patinas, not those marked by rust, corrosion, or environmental wear. But here's where the story gets interesting. Even with rough surfaces, certain 1919 pennies can still spark strong interest when rarity or historical character enters the picture. The year 1919 itself is significant. This was a period of transition in the British Mint, with multiple mints striking pennies including London, Heaton, and King's Norton. Collectors pay special attention to the mint marks beneath the date, since small varieties can make a massive difference in value. If a rusted 1919 penny happens to be a rarer variety, such as the elusive King's Norton KN issue, then even a damaged example will attract bidders. It's a reminder that rarity can sometimes outweigh condition. Now, about those rusted surfaces. Coins can corrode when stored in damp or acidic conditions, may be buried in the ground, forgotten in a shed, or left exposed to moisture. This creates pitting, discoloration, and surface roughness. To a strict collector, this is usually a negative, but to certain historians and character-driven collectors, the coin tells a story. Imagine this penny surviving the end of World War I, passed through working hands in a post-war Britain still rebuilding, only to be lost for decades before reappearing with the marks of time etched across it. That sense of survival gives it a different kind of charm. From a value perspective, a heavily rusted 1919 penny might fetch only a few dollars in the open market. But and this is the kicker, if it's a rarer mint-marked version, even in corroded shape, collectors have been known to pay $200 to $500. And in some cases, where the coin holds both rarity and clear diagnostic features despite its surfaces, prices can climb into the thousands. One particularly corroded example with the KN mark shocked bidders when it still managed to sell for nearly $8,000, proof that history sometimes trumps perfection. Here's the dramatic conclusion: while pristine 1919 pennies can soar to $20,000 or more in gem grades, even those scarred by rust can surprise. To the casual eye, they may look like worthless scrap metal, but to the trained collector, they carry stories, secrets, and sometimes serious value. That's the beauty of numismatics. Even the most unlikely looking coin might just be the sleeper hit of an auction. And last but not least, we arrive at the 1945 UK 1 penny, a coin that holds a special place in history as one of the very last issued before the end of World War II. Collectors instantly perk up when they hear 1945 penny, because it represents a transitional moment in British coinage. While the mintage was large, very few high-quality examples survived the years without scratches, discoloration, or heavy circulation wear. Most of the coins you'll come across today are dull and worn, but if you find one that has sharp details and strong original color, you might just be holding a small fortune. Now here's where things get interesting. Ordinary circulated 1945 pennies can still bring around $10 to $50 depending on the condition, which isn't too surprising. But when you move into higher grades, the value rises dramatically. Crisp uncirculated examples with that beautiful reddish-brown tone collectors love can command thousands, often reaching well over $10,000 at auction. And then there are the ultra-rare error coins from this year, off-center strikes, double dies, or even planchet flaws. Those can elevate the price to staggering heights. In fact, one 1945 error penny in remarkable shape shocked collectors by fetching close to $300,000, proving that even a coin many assume is common can hold jaw-dropping secrets. Think about it. A penny that most people spent without hesitation back in the post-war years could today be one of the crown jewels of a collection. This is the magic of numismatics. The thrill of discovery, the chance that what looks ordinary might actually be extraordinary. So the next time you stumble upon a 1945 penny tucked away in a box or passed down from family, don't dismiss it as pocket change. With the right condition, and maybe a rare error, you could be looking at a life-changing treasure. And with that, we wrap up our countdown of the top 7 UK 1 pennies worth shocking amounts of money. Each coin tells its own story of history, rarity, and hidden value, and each one reminds us why collecting is so captivating. Now I have to ask, do you think you might have one of these rare gems tucked away at home?